Hello, everyone. Welcome to the wasmCloud community meeting for Wednesday, December 13th. We've got a nice and quick agenda for today. I've got a short little demo about inspecting component WIT worlds with wasmInspect. And then we're going to take a look at the published wasmCloud 1.0 roadmap, which we put out a little bit earlier this morning with a blog and a documentation page. So we'll just give some time to through that, give folks a chance to ask some questions, and then I'll be providing some links to all of that. Again, our roadmap is kind of a constantly evolving document, not always a set in stone thing. So without further ado, talking about the roadmap, let's go ahead and look at a quick demo. So last week I did a little bit of a demo in the componentized JS world where you could run wash build and create a component from JavaScript, which was really cool to see and watch work. And during that demo, you might have seen me run a command like this, wasm tools component width, and then point it at the component that we've built. Now, just like with the wasmCloud idea of signing a WebAssembly or a wasmCloud actor with claims, we essentially get a really similar level of observability at an even more fine-grained level of a component by taking a look at the WIT world that the component uses. And inside this world is a list of imports and exports of all of the functions that the WebAssembly component needs to either import in order to get what it wants to do done, or export so that the host, in our case, wasmCloud, and under the hood wasmTime, will call. So this is the entire list of functionality that this WebAssembly component will use. It's useful from the security standpoint because you can see exactly what it's going to try to do. And very useful, especially when looking at the standard interfaces like WasIO, WasCLI, things like that that have common implementations and well-known interfaces. So this is really cool. And a couple places during last week's demo, I was using Wash, and a couple places I was using Wasm tools because this is such a important thing to look at. If you remember, actually, let's see if I have it. We may, let me see if this one, that one still has the width. Last week I had one that was actually an invalid component, so I figured I'd bring that up. So something small that's going to make it into the next version of Wash is the ability to print out a component's WIT world using Wash Inspect. So if you've used Wash Inspect, or I'll just use cargo run to keep it easy, because this is something that's going to merge in today, and you point it at either a file or say a wasmCloud OCI reference, we'll essentially take that WebAssembly module or component, inspect it, and then output the claims that we have included. So this is all the signing information for wasmCloud. What we added was the ability to tack on --wit, and I'll pull up the help text just so that you all can see that information. The --wit flag will extract the wit world from a component and print that instead of the claims. So if you do --wit, I did check because it annoys me. You can do it before or after the reference. Then that will essentially parse this as a WebAssembly component or module and try to grab the wit from it. Now you'll notice if I run this with one of our existing wasmCloud actors and say, hey, there's no wit present in this example. This looks like a WASI Preview 1 module. And there is a difference between those two. It's important for us to know that. If we were to point this at a component, we can look at the componentized JS, for example. Then the output is the exact same as using the wasm tools tool. So, and I'm actually just using the same crate or the same library under the hood as wasm tools is using. It's all a common implementation. We grab the root package, the root world out of the component, and we print out all the imports and exports. If you wanted to look at how this implementation worked, who knows if you do, but I will show you anyways. Essentially, what we're doing is just taking all of the bytes and trying to parse that as a WebAssembly component. If we do end up pulling that component out and the encoding of the WebAssembly file is a component, then we can pull out the WIT world from that and print it to standard out. Here's the little error that you saw when I tried to inspect an old wasmCloud actor, saying, hey, this looks like a WASI Preview 1 module. And then, of course, the rest of it is the regular fallbacks of inspecting the claims and inspecting capability providers, things like that. So this is the first of many features that's going to come with Wash for working with WebAssembly components. I guess that's kind of a lie. Wash build is the first one because you can build WebAssembly components with it. But I think it's really important that you can go from, doing wash build to a wash inspect and be able to make sure that your WIT world is what you expect. All your imports and exports match up. I think that this will be really nice for the development part, being able to just take a look at that interface. Coming next, what will be in the pipeline for Wash is the ability to validate. I think we should be able to validate that it's a component. You can already see that we can tell if it's a module or a Preview 2 component. Preview 2 component being either a command or a reactor. I know these are all the super specific WebAssembly terms. I figured now is the time to get all that out. And then so we can tell what imports and exports it's using. And we can validate that that set of imports and exports is a set that we expect and can handle inside of wasmCloud. And since Wash, when you run Wash up, essentially ties itself to a version of wasmCloud, we can inspect that and know before we even load the component that we're going to be able to satisfy all the interfaces. So all those interfaces also belong in our documentation. It's not just something that should be, programmatically available, but it'll be really nice to be able to validate that before loading the component in wasmCloud and saying, oops, looks like you're using a preview version of this WIT interface. We're actually using the pinned version, so you need to use this. Or, hey, it looks like you have a custom contract that we weren't, or a custom import here. You might want to compose that with another component to be able to satisfy that import. So all of these things is just turning Wash into a better component building CLI. And really the goal would just be to simplify it when you're already in the wasmCloud mindset of developing, to not have to go back and forth between CLIs. But of course, Wasm Tools, the actual CLI from the Bytecode Alliance will probably be our main recommendation for composing components together and doing anything advanced, because it's not the scope of the Wash project to do all of those things. Folks have questions, suggestions, comments on that demo?
Question, Brooks.
Yeah.
Philosophically, right now, the WebAssembly developer experience means, downloading a dozen tools and, learning them all. Is the vision that Wash will become the kitchen sink and, we'll have, just all the developer experience all integrated right there?
I think when it comes to you are experimenting and developing on something that you plan to run in wasmCloud, Wash would have the kitchen sink or silverware drawer of tools that you need to be successful to do that. So something as simple as looking at the width of a component, we should be able to do that. We should be able to do similar things. Um, Whether or not this becomes a standard tool, I think that is actually more well suited for the Wasm tools suite in the Bytecode Alliance, because it's always, our goal is always to maintain that compatibility. So if you use all the standard tools, you build a component, you run it in Wasm time, it works. You bring that whole thing over to wasmCloud, and you can continue going there. That answer your question, Liam?
Yeah. I'm just curious about I just want to clarify the sort of philosophical intent there. That's all. And You mentioned silverware. Are you thinking rename? Or are you going to go with like Bindle or something like that?
I know. As soon as I said silverware drawer, I remembered Bindle. It was just a good analogy.
Why the
Whoever came up with it. You don't like it?
let's not let's not go into that bureau.
Fine. No, I think that wash is here to stay. I think the puns that we can create with wash is too great. Um, if you know the person who owns the wash crate and can let us stop using wash CLI, let us know. Not a big deal for most people. Okay, anyways, we're going to, unless there are any other questions, I think we can go ahead and move on to the next step in the community meeting. Sweet. All right. So the next thing, we just have one discussion item. I wanted to unveil the wasmCloud 1.0 official roadmap while we were on the community meeting. And this is something that we've kind of been leading up to in the previous weeks. We talked about, a retrospective on this year's quarter three, quarter four roadmap. And we've looked at essentially a rough draft of where we were going in GitHub projects. But now, if you run into the wasmCloud documentation and you take a look at the roadmap page, this is actually the same link as the previous one. So we're always just going to be constantly updating this as we go through different phases of the project. There is now our quarter one roadmap for next year, which is the wasmCloud. We'll kind of culminate in the wasmCloud 1.0 milestone. There's a little bit of specific nuance here around the phases of the project that we're going to use in terms of like work in progress. Before we were using a now, next, later format, which worked really well for essentially incremental releases. Here are the things that the maintainers and contributors are essentially focused on getting into the next minor release of wasmCloud. Here are some things that we'll work on in the next release, and then later are things that are spikes and just things that have external dependencies or external blockers. It's just a very general type of Kanban board. Now that we're looking at 1.0, I think it's time to move on to a little more formal release specification, kind of like how Golang does their planning, where we're essentially planning tasks for specific releases of wasmCloud. Very loosely, you can think of the now, next, later as being, 1.0 is now, 1.1 is next, 1.2 is later. So, we're conceptually doing a similar thing, but we're going to specifically emphasize issues for particular milestones in the wasmCloud roadmap. We don't have any plans for a cadence, like a cadenced release of a minor version, but one of the most important things to call out here is that when we're planning, if we're putting tasks in the 2.0 bucket at this stage, moving towards 1.0, it means that it's a significant breaking change that's out of scope for the current time, and that's going to be Semver incompatible with 1.0. All this really to say that this is just going to change the look of the roadmap in GitHub projects. And if you are a community member that's looking at taking an issue that we have spelled out, as long as it's not a Semver incompatible change, just because it's not on the roadmap doesn't mean it doesn't belong in, the next version of wasmCloud. I'm going to continue to carry over. I think we should carry over these goals from roadmap to roadmap. They somewhat develop over time. There's a little bit different language here, but all in all, we're still striving for the same goals as a project around providing a seamless developer experience for building, testing, and deploying WebAssembly components, enabling developers to build features without vendor lock-in, platform-specific dependencies, or language constraints, and then leveraging and making default as many WebAssembly and cloud native standards as possible as we move through development. So it's really important for us to be using WebAssembly components, version WIT interfaces, WASI APIs, and then fitting in in our ideal place, especially being a part of the CNCF, we're using as many common standards as possible so that the barrier to entry to looking at a WebAssembly project, it's like, oh, hey, I want to add observability to this, or I want to hook this into my observability pipeline. All you need to do is get an OTel exporter URL and you get your metrics logging and tracing. wasmCloud at the forefront, of its goals is a WebAssembly, and kind of an innovation project, and it's a cloud native incubating soon project, hopefully. So CNCF project is what I really meant to say there. I'm getting ahead of myself. As we look to the 1.0, we've got a couple of key features that we really want to focus on. These are the top 5 things that wasmCloud does that makes us unique. Declarative WebAssembly orchestration, seamless distributed networking, vendorless application components, being completely OTel observable, and employing a defense in depth security by default model. Now, the top 3 here are the ones that we are featuring on the homepage of our website. These are the things that we really are happy about as maintainers and members of the project. This is what we do. And the rest are things that, 4 and 5 are very important and core tenets of the project. Okay, high level overview over. I just want to skim through the rest of the roadmap really quick. Um, Most of the work that we're doing here falls into one of 3 buckets. It might just be easier. Might just be easier to look at it from this view. The work that we're doing to get to 1.0, first and foremost, is stabilization of APIs. And this is um, what's the right way to say this? This is the least exciting part, the most grunt worky. This is the part that I can see a lot of the maintainers taking on. Basically, we have our control interface API, and this is the time to ask the question of, do we like the way that this is set up? Do we do we like the JSON payloads? Are there any more that we want to add? Things like that around RPC, our cloud events, namespacing, environment variables, all of those things are essentially just taking a look at what we have, noting inconsistencies, and getting to a stable and common place. The next category is around WebAssembly standards. It's going to be very important for us to pin all of our standard WASI interfaces to the 0.2 milestone. This matches up with WASI Preview 2, so that any project that's building with components and building with WASI Preview 2 APIs can run in wasmCloud as well. Same with support for WASM Time 16, and lots of work in our examples and documentation, some of which is already ongoing, especially with our providers, so that when people are building things for WASM Cloud, they are building those components instead of using the stable ABI, which would be deprecated as of 1.0, but not planned to be removed for the foreseeable future. Last but not least, there is some additional wasmCloud functionality that we see as necessary to hit 1.0, either because of the production readiness of the project, like OTel metrics and log exporting, and support for secrets and configuration. Those things we need for a production ready, for us to say this is 1.0 production ready, go kick the tires. And then some of it are changes that would be breaking enough that if we cut a 1.0 without them, we would soon be moving to a 2.0 as a project. Primarily those things being supporting multiple entity versions in a lattice, which is an RFC that, well, this is an image, so I can't link to it, but it's linked in the original roadmap. And the ability to distribute WIT resource functions and methods. So that is the high level diagram. You notice that all these are in columns. That's not out of laziness. This is because all of these can effectively be tackled in parallel. Now, if you're working on stabilizing the entire control interface and then you support multiple entity versions in a lattice, do those things at the same time, there's going to be merge conflicts, but no individual thing here really depends on another task. So we're going to be prioritizing them essentially Kanban style. This is a look at our GitHub roadmap. I'll send that in the chat as well, but we also have that linked on the roadmap page itself. There we go. And you can see we're going in this part. I still have some of the previous milestones laid out here. I think that's fine to keep for now, but eventually we'll start clearing them out. On the 1.0 page, it just includes any tasks that are in the 1.0 milestone, and we'll essentially move these from triage where we'll add more information to ready for work and so on and so on. So if there's a task in here that is tagged as ready for work, especially if you can select it and see that it has a good first issue label, all of these are up for grabs from maintainers of the project to contributors. And if it's good first issue, it could be someone who is contributing to the project for the first time. So please feel free to check up on these. I will try and emphasize the ones that are available and have a high impact. And those are all going to be tagged with this good first issue. Some of them might have Hacktoberfest on it too, because, well, that was pretty fun. Hacktoberfest, we'll just keep it. And then by the time it rolls around next year, so we'll have some issues for Hacktoberfest. All right, folks. Well, that is really what I wanted to show off with the wasmCloud roadmap. There's lots of RFCs going in and some things that we're discussing in the design space. So if you've worked with wasmCloud, you built wasmCloud actors or providers before, please keep an eye on the wasmCloud Slack. We'll try to socialize any of the higher impact or needs discussion type RFCs there. Okay. Any questions, comments, or feedback? Yeah, Connor.
Hey Brooks, I've worked in wasmCloud for a little bit. I've got some existing things that I've built, like some modules that haven't been componentized. When wasmCloud moves to 1.0, am I going to have to rewrite everything?
Yeah, that's a great question. To answer directly, no, you don't have to rewrite anything. We are still going to carry over support for the WasmBus ABI and kind of the existing module format in wasmCloud 1.0. Still going to work with capability providers, even if they have been witified. So for now, there's no need to change any of those things. One thing that we will do in the documentation as we change everything to be, componentized by default is work on giving you the simplest path forward to get from, essentially a current wasmCloud actor to a wasmCloud actor component, the things that'll use WIT interfaces, be compiled to a WASI module, things like that. Thank you, not plant. Plant. Connor, does that answer your question?
I was going to make a joke about responding in plant speak, but I think that would just be silence. So instead, I'll say yes. Thanks for answering my question.
Nice. It's a great question. We did consider when we were looking at the wasmCloud roadmap for 1.0, actually deprecating and removing the wasmbus ABI. That is essentially the current format where when you build an actor using wasmbus RPC and using Smithy interfaces, even if they are the common interfaces from wasmCloud, like HTTP server, key value store, we did consider removing that for 1.0, essentially as a forcing function to get everyone to build with components. And I think the reality is that using that stable ABI is still useful in some domains, and removing it would be a little aggressive. I don't foresee a need to fall back on that often. I mean, ideally, we wouldn't need to fall back on it at all, but there may be some things in the future where we want to be able to work with that stable ABI, even if I know it's a little convoluted to say this, but even if it's using the same stable ABI using a WIT generated interface, those kinds of things would be still useful to support. So looking forward, I think we are loosely planning on deprecating that as of 1.0 and then removing support for it in 2.0, which should give everyone plenty of time to migrate or at least take a look at our steps to do so and determine whether or not it's too high friction or not. And if it's too high friction, then we can make that path better so that it's not too much of a pain. All right, folks, any other questions? I had a feeling that this community meeting might be a little bit light as we're getting closer and closer to the holidays, but we'll keep rolling these through. I know with the what really okay. It messed with me because I know with the live stream, if I'm the only one with my picture on, it just shows me. It doesn't show anybody, like all the people who are in the call with their cameras off. So it looks like I'm talking directly to you, live stream audience, and nobody else. But anyways, before pontificating on that, Liam, anything else? Otherwise, we can
Almost finished with
go.
WASM Day submissions. It's been really hard this year. A lot of incredible talks for WASM Day. Um, we are close to posting CFP for WASMCon, but WASMCon should be posted. We'll link details here shortly. And uh, we haven't missed a wasmCloud Wednesday in a long time, Brooks, right? I mean, it's been, I mean, 2 years plus at
Yeah, have we
least.
missed a wasmCloud Wednesday?
No, we even dialed in on Christmas one day, one year. It was just like me and Jordan, but we dialed in. We made it happen. It's like 5 minute meeting.
Yeah.
So, just keep it alive, you know? All right.
Love it. All right, folks. Well, then we will go ahead and call it here, and we'll see you next week. That'll be the 20th. So that one definitely doesn't overlap with the holiday. And then the next one will be the 27th. So we'll kind of leapfrog some holidays here and there. Uh, Okie dokie. I'm going to stop the stream, and then everybody's welcome to hang out for
Are
Wasm
are
Cloud
we
after
all
dark.
come
Well,
are we all coming dressed as holiday favorites next meeting? Is that still the plan?
dressed as holiday favorites or like with
Yeah.
a
Are you gonna be
holiday?
Santa or am I gonna be Santa? I wasn't sure.
Hmm. I think we might need to hold like a community meeting, a community vote.
I mean,
All
I'm
right.
definitely fat and jolly. I mean, I'm just saying. I don't know that I got
All
the
right.
right style beard, but I'm pretty close.
Well, you've got a beard, so yeah,
I,
I'll
I
yield.
I see Brooks as the head elf in the workshop.
Buddy, it is. Do you want to know what, Vance, is bizarre? Is I actually have both onesies in my closet already. I don't know what's weirder, that I have two onesies or that one is Santa and one is Buddy the Elf. Or three that I'm talking about it on a community meeting that'll be on the internet forever.
All right, before Liam reveals more skeletons or onesies in his closet, go ahead and call this one. Thanks, folks. See you next week with some holiday cheer.